Hello, listeners. This is Janine
and Kristen
from Henrico Casa. You are listening to our podcast, Vigilant Voices. Living life every day. Hello, listeners, and welcome back to Henrico Casa's Vigilant Voices podcast.
Yes, today's our first guest episode of 2026. It's actually also our first episode that we've ever recorded remotely, thanks to the snow in Richmond, Virginia right now. So bear with us on audio, but we are so excited to introduce you to a fellow Vigilant Voice here in Henrico County.
That's right. And today's guest is a journalist with our local news source, the Henrico Citizen.
Right. She's specifically their government and education reporter, which is why we invited her to join us. You know, in covering education in our community, we have no doubt she hears firsthand about the challenges facing local students.
That's right. And we're excited to learn more. And so let's not wait any longer in introducing Liana Hardy. Liana, thank you so much and welcome. We are really excited to have you here to talk with you today. But we always love to start out with our guests, just allowing them to introduce themselves. So we'd love to know a little bit about you and maybe what led to your career in journalism, what led you here to Richmond, all the good things.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to be here, and thank you for all the work that you do in the community. Henrico Casa is amazing, and so I'm so glad to be able to support you all. So what led me to Richmond and into journalism, my dad was actually a local journalist in Charlottesville and Petersburg in Virginia. So I always thought that was really cool, local news. And I'm from Arlington, Virginia in Nova. And I went to school at Georgetown in DC. So I originally wanted to get into politics, and then I kind of shifted into journalism after realizing that was more of my thing. And I had my first internship was at this small local newspaper in Alexandria, Virginia called the Alexandria Times, and it was still in print. And I think that made me realize that I really wanted to do local news, especially just like community-centered news. A small newsroom was kind of, I realized, was my place. And so I joined Report for America in 2023, and they put me down here in Henrico to cover educational equity in Henrico County for the Henrico Citizen, basically covering all of the Henrico schools. And I've also started covering government since this past July. So now I do government and education. I've been on here for 2.5 years, and it's been great.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
I love that. I feel like covering government kind of got you back a little bit to your political science original desire.
Yeah,
definitely. So that's a great circle. And before we go any further, listener, CASA has a really nice long-standing relationship with a national sorority, Kappa Alpha Theta. And so we just want to give a shout out to all the Thetas, especially at Georgetown, because Liana is a Theta. So hello, ladies, and thanks for listening. We love that you all just end up finding great career paths and ways to then reconnect with CASA over the years. That makes us so happy. Okay, so as we mentioned in the intro, Liana, you specifically report on government and education, which is a perfect tie-in, right, for our work at CASA, because we support our local government by serving the courts and by partnering with the Department of Social Services. And then in having those relationships and working with kids, we just start having extensive interactions with the education system, educators, administrators, and just the school system in general. And I guess just for you, like, those topics clearly tie into our work, but what do you love about government and education and reporting on those issues?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that education beat, or, in journalism, kind of each topic is a beat. It's almost like a microcosm of so many issues. Like, I feel like when you cover education, you're also covering community and social issues. You're covering science and health, so, social justice, economics, and the government beat is also kind of like that, where it's just so many issues, pulled into one, which is really cool. And I think the big thing is like educational experiences and journeys, they're not homogeneous like across the country, and they're not even homogeneous in Henrico. Yeah. So like your K-12 experience like kind of sets the direction for the rest of your life almost. Like it's just so important. And I think
Yeah.
it's interesting when I like cover education here and I get to talk to like a lot of high schoolers, which is one of my favorite parts. Just because like in high school, I think students start to become like more aware of the issues and the world around them, and they start to become more involved in the community, and they just have such like interesting perspectives, I think, on what's going
Yeah.
on. Even like in the past, at the past Henrico school board meeting last week, there was this seventh grade girl who actually came up, and she talked about how there needs to be more winter girls sports in the county, and how like it's
Mm.
like there's an equity problem because boys have more options to do winter sports than girls, and she was just 12 years old, but she had already started to get that awareness, which was really cool.
Mhm.
And I think another thing that's cool is like with education and government, you get to talk to kind of like actual people and students and teachers. So not just, business people or officials or experts with some other beats, but like you get to be more on the ground just talking to everyday people, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really, really neat. Well, and I think you're exactly right that there's so much of it's intertwined, right, with all of these systems
Yeah.
of care and systems of assistance, et cetera. So I totally can see that piece and how it's so interesting to see how everything works, day to day, month to month, year to year, et cetera. Um, but I'm sure in your role that you're also hearing firsthand about some of the complex issues that face children and families in our community. And I guess we're kind of curious, since you have the beat on some of this, what are you seeing as any current or recent issues that, are standing out to you that our community should know about, or just trends that you're seeing, or, just what's on the horizon, right, as we're thinking about local children and families?
Yeah, I think there's always so many things going on in Henrico schools, even though it's just one county, there's always just so much going on at once. I know like in the recent past, one of the first big things I covered, and this was about 3 years ago, was kind of an issue where Henrico schools was found to disproportionately suspend Black students. So they made up about, this was in 2022, 2023, they made up about two-thirds of students suspended, but only one-third of the student population. So there was an equity issue there.
Mhm.
And one of the big news was that one predominantly Black middle school actually suspended nearly half of its student body that year. And so that was really a big challenge in how, Henrico as a division kind of goes about discipline and who is enacted. And there was a big report in 2018, actually, so like kind of recent, conducted by Ann Holton. It's often referred to as the Holton Report, and she was Secretary of Education. She's also Tim Kaine's wife, and she actually looked at Henrico schools and kind of looked at some of the inequities in how Henrico disciplines students with disabilities, particularly Black students with disabilities, compared to the rest of the population. And that's been like a big, I think, point of change for how Henrico can, move forward, because it was such a big report. And so I think that's really influenced, how the division has gone about trying to implement some changes in its student code of conduct, stuff like that. Um, and currently, I think some of the biggest issues for families at Henrico schools have been, school overcrowding and, this growing population in Henrico. Like many of the schools in Western Henrico have kind of seemed to run out of space in the past few years. And, many teachers have very large classes. And I think that's something I hear about a lot. But on the other hand, a lot of schools in Eastern Henricos have emptier buildings, they have space for more students, but just the way development and population growth has kind of happened, it's, like
Mm-hmm.
people have just moved into one side of the county, and it kind of brings kind of an imbalance.
Mhm.
And I think another thing that I've noticed on the education and government side, this often like comes up in government, is just the like impact of the growing amount of vape and smoke shops in Henrico. And I think that's prompted a
Right.
lot of concerns, especially because there's a lot that were put next to schools before this local ordinance went out that kind of prevented that. But because they came in before, there's not much you can
Yeah.
do. And oftentimes these shops sell illegal substances and they don't check IDs. And Henrico officials have even said they, had sightings of young children purchasing items at these shops. So I think that's definitely something that's on the community's mind.
So as you're talking, I'm just thinking about how many things intersect with education, and it's just really amazing. Any one can really truly change the trajectory of a child's educational experiences, their life experiences, what they encounter. So it's really interesting to hear you kind of list out some of these relevant topics. I know one that comes to mind for me, and Janine, probably you as well, but we've seen a lot of change and growth in like mental health services that the school system is offering, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of the continuum of care that's offered to students and what that can look like. And I feel like that's also a trend and something that's relevant to the student population right now. And I guess, when I think about news and things you're covering, my mind automatically goes to the negative things just because, the headlines tend to be challenges or obstacles or problems. But what about some of the good stuff? Is there anything that you see going on for children, families, specific schools where you're like, this is a really positive outcome or positive story?
Yeah, no, just what you were saying. I feel like I've noticed in the past few years how there's been a lot more emphasis from Henrico schools on mental health support. They have this big new mental health plan called Henrico Cares, and just more
Yeah.
wraparound supports, I think, like
Hmm.
behavioral stuff, but also like family to community mediators, more
Yeah.
extracurricular support for students who may not have access to it. I think it's kind of this like shifting mindset that like, you can support a student as much as you can like when they're in the school building, but a lot of what impacts their like educational journey is what happens at home. So you have to make
Hmm.
sure, students
Yeah.
are fed over the weekends and that they're getting enough educational support at home. And I think that's a really good mindset shift just because like, you know, like just it impacts students so much and it really, two students can be getting like I think the same experience in the classroom, but their experiences outside of the classroom can really change what their overall journey is like. And I think another cool thing to see the past few years in Henrico is just like the investment in CTE and trades education. That's not something you
Yeah.
always see in like
Yeah.
other school divisions, because some school districts just may not see that as valuable, but there's so many, ways that you can go into a trade and just have a great pathway to the
Hmm.
workforce. And
Yeah.
I've been talking to students who, were seniors at high school and did CTE and then maybe a year or two later, they were fully employed with a great salary and they were
Yeah.
super confident in themselves and they had like a path going and it was great. And I think it's cool that Henrico's launched, so many like innovative programs.
Hmm.
I think they have like, I heard this the other week that they have the nation's first ever like fire sprinkler system class, which like I don't, which is so
Yeah.
specific, it's crazy. So I think that's
Yeah.
really cool. And I think
No,
one of the things that
fantastic.
sticks out every year is that at the Henrico Citizen, we do a top teachers series each year.
That's
So
right.
people at their school can nominate, teachers who they see as like standout teachers, and then we choose 20 each year to do a profile. And I get to talk to most of these teachers and talk about like some of their favorite memories, some of their more like challenging moments, and I just feel like every teacher I talk to is just so like completely devoted to their students and their
Mhm.
job, like it's just their entire life. And they like multiple teachers I've talked to said that they go to like all their students' soccer games and dance recitals and birthday parties, even after they've like moved on to another grade. So I think that's super great to hear.
Yeah, no, I mean that's fantastic, and we love our colleagues and friends at CTE, and I'm so proud of the county for really wanting to invest in that and teach our students that there are so many ways to have a successful career, right? And that can look in so many things, and then highlighting and spotlighting the teachers who are doing so many amazing things to, help our students discover that path, right? What's best
Yeah.
for them. So love that. Um, well, Leanna, we're wrapping up here. Time always flies, and it's been so nice
Mhm.
talking to you and just, hearing just, the things that you're reporting on and how they're also probably impacting and affecting some of the children and families that CASA serves.
Mhm.
And as you know, and you're aware of that, our mission at Henrico Casa is for every child in Henrico County, but beyond just our county too, to have a safe home. And what about you? We always love to ask our guests, what's your vision, or perhaps another way to say it is, what's your hope for children and families in our community?
Yeah, I think my vision or hope for, kids and families and in Henrico would be to have, all, kids, no matter what circumstances or where they live in the county, have all the same opportunities and educational experiences. And I know that's something that's super hard to achieve, but I think it starts by acknowledging that, students are getting different educational experiences just based on, their own life experiences. And I think that's something that the school division has started to acknowledge with their kind of wraparound mindset. So I think that's a really good start. And that, many students will need more and different supports than other students, and that's just kind of how
Sure.
it works. Yeah. And I think also my hope is like, all students feel safe at school physically and emotionally. And just, I think it's important to have someone to talk to in the building, whether it's like a friend or a classmate or a teacher, just like another adult. I feel like that's such a big thing, when you're a young kid at school. So yeah, I would say that's like my hope for Henrico families.
Yeah,
Love
I
that.
love that. And I think you're so right. Being seen as an individual, like knowing that you have a person, a safe person in the building is life-changing for kids. They need that.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking specifically, for the kids that we serve at CASA, but all children and students could really benefit from that. And thank you so much for pointing out that a student's home life really plays a major role in then their educational experience and their potential success in the classroom. If you're scared or worried about what's happening at home, if you don't have a full belly, if you haven't had a good night's sleep, all those things kind of set you up to even be able to learn at school. And so
Yeah.
recognizing that is just really important to us. And, we're trying to see each child we serve as an individual, and they have such unique needs, and no situation is exactly the same. And so we love knowing that then when that translates to school and that they're seen and heard as an individual and supported. So I'm so glad you pointed out your vision and just what you're seeing that's positive going on in the school system. But we like to end our episodes with just a call to action, something simple that anyone in the community could do to make it a better place for children and students. So knowing all you know about the government and the education systems here in Henrico, what would your call to action be?
Yeah, I would say my call to action would be to, obviously, if you haven't done so already, keep supporting Henrico Casa and all the amazing work that they do, and also support the work of the Henrico Citizen. We're the Henrico's only independent, nonpartisan local news source, and we publish 5 days a week, completely original work. And we depend fully on individual donations and small business advertising. So you can find us online. And also, I would say just, get involved in your local community and stay up to date with what's going on in your area, and not just by reading news, but just having conversations with more people, just different types of people. Just that in-person conversation, I feel like is so important. And that's something that I get to do through my job, which I'm really lucky. But I feel like I've been trying to just, even outside of my job, just talk to more people that I wouldn't generally talk to, and try to just hear people's perspectives and ask questions and really listen to people. And I just feel like you can learn so much from that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're so right. And I
Agree.
love, so shout out to the Henrico Citizen in general. You all have been so
Yes.
supportive of us, especially in terms of volunteer recruitment. We are constantly looking to recruit advocates, and we're so thankful that you run articles and we swear in new advocates, and we're running info sessions, and when we're in recruitment
Yeah.
modes. So we're really thankful to that. And just to build off your call to action, it can feel overwhelming to stay up to date on everything that's going. I mean, there's so much news out there, and
Yeah.
I just love the Citizens. You would know exactly what it's called, but it's like kind of the news brief. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you
Thank
so
you
Yeah.
so
much.
Thank you
much.
so much for having me.
Yeah, have a
Yeah,
great
this is
snow
great.
day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, Leanna.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Vigilant Voices, Henrico Citizen's new podcast. We have a vision for all children to live in safe, healthy homes. You can help us make that happen. Tell a friend about our podcast and find us on social media.
I believe in a better day.